Yeah, I'll do it right now.
How do you take $10,000 and
Turns to
turn
million.
it into $1 million? Go ahead.
You let's say you're buying a home, FHA loan, 3.5%. So you're buying for 300 grand. You put down 10 grand, right? And now you're replacing rent with mortgage payments. So you're going to pay rent anyhow, but now you're paying mortgage. So that's it. 30 years later, average, rising of real estate, that 300 grand turns into $1 million, right?
Correct.
And your mortgage is paid off. So you started with 10,000 of equity and you turned it into $1 million worth of equity, and that happens.
It happens every day. It happened to
That
me in my
happens.
house.
Right. That's how real estate works.
Before Justin Ford became a real estate titan, he spent over 15 years in financial publishing, working with some of the world's top economists, including Austrian economic thought leaders like Kirk Reckenberg, the former head of Dresdner Bank. He studied market cycles, saw bubbles before they burst, and brought that macro insight into real estate well before the 2008 crash. Then he built Pax Property, a firm that now owns over 1,600 units across 4 states that's worth more than $160 million in assets under management. His track record: never lost investor capital, never missed a mortgage payment, never handed back a single key, even through COVID. He's vertically integrated, construction, ops, management, all in-house. And he's created the CAP strategy: cash flow, amortization, positive leverage, a real framework for real wealth that actually works. Justin Ford doesn't speculate, he strategizes, and that's why elite investors trust him, and that's why you need to listen to today.
Appreciation is the shiny object. That's what everyone chases, right? But the trouble about appreciation, it's the only one of those 4 things you cannot control.
He's got around $1 million in insurance. He's going to have $650,000 in insurance. But
so.
what's $400,000 increase in NOI
Right.
on your cap rate,
No,
on your bank?
Are you kidding
It's
me?
unbelievable. All right, folks, welcome back to Real Estate Profit Boost. This is the show where we break down the hidden levers that grow net operating income. That's right. We elevate your execution and we unlock real world wealth in commercial real estate. So if you're serious about building wealth through real estate and want access to mindsets like Justin Ford, models, and things that move from the elite operators, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe. Share this with somebody who's leveling up. Don't gatekeep this info. We rise by lifting others. So with that said, today's guest is Justin Ford from Pax Properties. He's a good friend of mine, a mentor, you name it. I've known the guy for, 15 years, something. We met at a Marcus conference standing in the hallway, believe it or not. So it's so it's weird how energy attracts, right? Good people attract and so on. But without a big intro, because I need 20 minutes to explain Justin's achievements. But Justin Ford today, I would say, is the founder and CEO of Pax Properties. He's a real estate, it's a real estate investment firm that's managed over 50 properties across 4 states, I believe, with a portfolio today spanning over 1,000 units and over 100 million in assets, right? But before real estate, Justin spent around 15 to 17 years in financial publishing, right? So he was working with some of the world's top economists, mindset leaders, from economy to mindset to stoicism, because Justin gave me my first stoicism book. Love it, Marcus Aurelius, right? So he's the mind behind the CAP strategy, which he calls cash flow, amortization, and positive leverage. And his leadership at Pax Properties has never missed a mortgage payment and never lost an investor $1, right? So that's pretty impressive. So that's it. Welcome, Justin Ford. Justin, welcome. So let's go deep. Any intro you want to tell us really quick before we go into some fun questions and teach the world?
No, it's just always a pleasure to be with you, Jerry. You're an amazing human being, and I look forward to the conversation.
All right, rock and roll, rock and roll. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we're gonna go a little bit about the past, a little about the future, and we'll end with a little lightning round about what Justin thinks about the future, right? Because it's also what Real Estate Profit Boost is, to catch your trends here. So Justin, you came from the world of financial publishing, more or less. How did studying global markets shape how you evaluate deals today, and is it important for, because our audience is anything from a rookie, right, all the way to a massive, billion-dollar syndicator.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about that and how that affected
Yeah.
who you are today.
Yeah, so I think the number one thing I learned in the financial markets was probably that the crowd can be wrong, and the crowd can be wrong in a big way at dramatic points, right? So 2008 is an example, right? You used to hear a lot of people saying you can't go wrong in real estate. My answer is you're not trying hard enough. You'll go wrong if you keep thinking that way. Believe me.
Right.
And we had a small portfolio. I started investing in 2002. So by the time 2008 came around before then, actually, I wrote a little real estate course, and I was telling people it was a bubble, and buy cash flow only. Don't speculate on stuff that you're going to flip it. If the rent doesn't cover your nut. And once you get your thing fixed, put on amortizing loans, long-term stuff, and use positive leverage. Positive leverage is debt that increases your return on your equity without dramatically increasing your risk. Okay, so I told them to do all this stuff, and I followed my advice. Now, when the crash came, my stuff got hit hard too. I had probably about 40 units at the time, and I woke up one morning at 3 a.m. I was like, "Damn, is this my life now? I'm tied to all these shitty little properties." Excuse me.
No worries.
Okay. Anyhow, so because they were, because I'm buying older stuff. We fixed them up. We did a good job with them and all that. But I was like, a lot of them were underwater, and at that moment I said, what would I do if I didn't own these properties? I go, I'd be buying like crazy. So I go, what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna have I had a little manager. This one woman take care of stuff. I was like, hey, you just take care of those things, and we're short a few $100. Let me know. I'll pump it out.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to let those things pay themselves off, and I'm going to focus on buying. And we went from 40 units to over 1,600 units, and
Wow.
and about $160 million worth of real estate. So
Right.
what's the lesson? The lesson there is, and by the way, of course, we make mistakes. I'm not saying but you could see, it was such a drunken time. It was like crazy, crazy, crazy. And drunk is a really good analogy, right?
Right. No, I get it.
I mean, so people were, like there were guys who were, landscapers who maybe had like $40,000 in income on their tax returns. Somehow they were getting approved for like $700,000 loans, right? Like crazy stuff like this. I went into the bank one time. I was buying some small property. It was Barnett Bank, which no longer exists because of
I remember Barnett. They bought them out. Yep.
they'll Chase bought them out, right? And the reason for that was like the loan officer was like, he said to me, he goes, I brought in all my docs because I was showing him all my income from my properties, the job at the time I had. And he's like, oh, no, don't give us your docs. He goes, it'll cost you just a quarter point more. We'll do a no doc. I go,
Right.
no, here are my docs. I want to save that quarter point. You can imagine how many times that guy did that no doc thing.
Right.
And then Barnett went underwater, right? It was, yeah. So what I learned in the financial publishing, to make a long story short, is this, Jared. People get drunk. They see people getting rich, whatever. So in the late 90s, you and I were around for the tech bubble, right? And we saw...
Lost my ass. Everything overnight, 6 weeks. That was my first biggest learning lesson. Go ahead.
Yeah, I feel you. So, I didn't have any money to invest at the time, but we were writing financial markets, and I worked with this amazing economist, Kurt Rischebacher. He was the leading Austrian school economist in the world, and he was he's an expert on Hayek and all these other guys in the Austrian School of Economics, which is basically really fundamental, what they should call liberal economics, where free market and everything makes rational sense. And so
liberal economics. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that was not in the modern term.
Right.
In the 19th century, what they should call that, which is basically based on the word liberal, meaning free to do, free market. But anyhow, so he identified the bubbles that was happening, right? And this is a guy, he used to be the head of Dresdner Bank, which is the largest bank in Germany, actually probably in Europe at one point.
I've been there. Dresden was attacked in World War II by the English,
yeah.
destroyed all the buildings in retaliation for the bombing of Germany. Interesting. Not a lot of people know where Dresden is. Right.
But this bank is Dresdner, but I don't know if it's based
okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, but
interesting.
So he identified the bubble, right? Mm-hmm. And then the bubble crashed. So what happened in the bubble? The bubble was tech was starting to take off. The internet was taking off. So people were pouring money into stuff. And they're pouring money into like garbage ideas. A lot of the guys who were forming companies where their whole idea was not to build a profitable company, but to get people to invest in it so they could exit with those investors' money, right? Like pet.com or stuff like that, right? MD.com, all these crazy websites.
Raise capital, raise valuation, insider stock, exit. If the company works, it works. If not, we get rich.
Correct.
Real straight integrity.
Right.
Got it.
They were getting rich off their investors, not for and with their investors, right? That's what they were doing. So but here's the thing that parallel to real estate. So you have all this money now flowing into tech because they're trying to make quick, easy money, right? So the bubble goes. Eventually, and I think it was early 2000, around March, it crashes. People get
right. 2000 was the wipeout. Yep.
It was a total wipeout, right? And you lose trillions of dollars of wealth, which is also a misnomer, by the way. What you have is you have a transfer wealth. You don't have it's not like, if we talk about wealth like physical things, it's not like cars disappeared off the road.
Right. No, I love it.
But the balance sheets change, right? This guy who thought he had $1 million in stock had 100,000, and the other guy had more money. But what it does affect the productive economy. I'm getting a little wonky here, but
no, you're not. But listen, it's the same thing. If I go into Einstein's theory, right, that energy is never what does he say? It's always transfer. Yeah. Right. So it's the same thing. It's transformation. Right. So the dollars don't disappear. They don't go from 100 to 0. They're just transferred somewhere else. And that's exactly what you're explaining. Go ahead.
But it has a real effect on the economy. So here's the way that happened. In the 90s, because everyone was chasing that, there was an underinvestment in roads, in bridges, in infrastructure, in oil and gas refineries, all this kind of stuff, because everyone was chasing the easy money. And then when the crash happens, you have all these people defaulting on different types of loans or whatever it is. And then you have the economy slowing. You have the economy slowing down so it does have a real impact in that way, right? Now all of a sudden, we start to grow again a little bit. Now the money's scared of the stock market. So where does it go? Houses, right? The cheap money starts to go into houses, right. And we saw that 2005, and the interest rates were getting low. So what I learned from the financial thing was that cheap money tends to create inflation, right? And here's the other thing. People were looking at consumer price inflation. But in the 90s, the inflation was in speculative stocks and the internet, right? Mm-hmm. In the first 7 or 8 years of the 2000s, inflation was in the houses, right? That's where it went, right? So the money can flow to different places and inflate different types of assets. And when you inflate those assets, you can create a dislocation of productive resources. I mean, that's Kurt Rishabasha 100%. And now where's the cheap money flowing, right? So you got to ask yourself that. And sometimes it hits.
So no, interesting. Very interesting, right? So to break that down, right, if I'm hearing this correctly, is wherever there is, you call it cheap money or a fast money play, right? Or a quick money play or a bubble. What happens is money pours into it. And the incentives usually, right, what you call liberal economy, right, which is a free economy, is basically greed, right? Because those investors were raising money. Why? Because the important thing is that we make money. Not everybody makes money. And when there's a trend, whether it be the .com bubble, whether it be crypto, whether it be, the mortgages that you can, qualify with a pulse, right? And all that things, what happens is the money flows in, it's interesting. Well, I'll get there in a second. The money flows in, and then it creates inflation based on that greed, right? And then it retracts massively, and then people lose all their money. But really, it's a transfer of wealth, right? And so there's always a trend that is a bubble also causes inflation, right? So it's interesting how that happens, right? And the transfer of wealth, is it productive or is it not productive, right? And the rich get richer in that scenario, right? Because they're the ones actually funding and feeding the frenzy and the marketing and everything and printing the dollars and going into it. So I know we're getting a little deep, but see, this is why I love talking to Justin, right? Because if you can go deep, you're going to hear things that you don't hear typically from a real estate investor. There's no frou-frou here. This is deep, Justin. So where that transfer of wealth, are they still in control? Are these people always on top? Because I'll give you my example, right? For me, I'm a Russian immigrant. I was broke. I had insecurity. I didn't have enough money. I had a sign in my room when I was a kid that said, the one with the most toys wins. I ended up on Wall Street, right? But before I was 30, Lehman Brothers, all that crap, right? So it was greed. It was greed based. It was me. I was a high stakes, high net worth guy, broker. I was calling people in country clubs in California, asking them for $1 million. million. It was unregulated at the time, our commission. And I'd ask for $1 million. They'd give me 100,000. I was making 5 to 8%, like crazy stuff.
Wow.
But what happened? The dot-com bubble happened.
Yep.
And I raised millions of dollars. I made myself $1 million. And of course, I got caught up in the hype, right? So I was leveraged, right? Margin and everything. And at the end of the day, everything crashed in 6 weeks. AOL went from 105 to 0, right? And what did I do? I destroyed everything that I had built, all of my wealth, right? I had a nice $5,000 suit.
Right.
You know, I had a Rolex that my boss forced me to buy. Okay. Wow. Yeah. And yeah, the first paycheck I got was $16,000 because I busted my ass. And by the way, nobody made it, really. Only 3 out of 100 made it. They paid you 0. But I had to buy a Rolex and I was left with $800. He's like, pressure will turn you to a diamond. Relax. That's Lehman Brothers. But at the end, I lost everything, right? And I had a $60,000 margin call. And if I didn't buy a condo on the east side of Manhattan, 1 bedroom, 600 square feet for 180 grand, I called my broker, said, what's it worth? I said, 400. I said, thank God. And I sold it, margin call, started over. But I was wiped out. Yeah. And that was my experience with that learning. So going back to, right, and now I try to time cycles, which is not the greatest thing either, right? Yeah. I've learned that too. But I'm always in mind. So back to a little deeper concept that you mentioned, because I've never talked about it. The transfer of wealth. Are those people that are starting those things, are they still in control? What do the economists say, right? Because there's always those people at the beginning of that hype or the easy money, and then they create it. Tell me a little bit. This is a little off the beaten path, but interesting how you would say.
Fun. I think this is interesting. I think it's fun. For me, everything's about the fundamentals because you have to know what you're building your business on, right? Kind of like what you're building your life on. Like you said, you were building it on greed at one point, right?
Correct.
And you found that unsustainable, right? So what is the fundamentals you're looking at? So when you ask about transfers of wealth, first you got to identify what is wealth, right? What's wealth in the economic sense, and then very importantly, you got to figure out what's wealth for you in your personal sense, your personal life, what that means, right? So wealth is, first of all, we can take physical wealth, right? So if we have a table in front of us and we got a pizza pie and we got a bunch of plates, and that's the whole economy, right? So and we have 6 guys sitting around the table and everyone's got $10. So we got $60, the economy, to compete for those limited goods, right? That's it, right? Right. And now someone steps in and they go, presto, Jerry, because you're some special class, I'm going to give you $50. I just printed it. Now you're outbidding all of us because we only got $10 each, right? And you start buying all that stuff, and you're getting wealthy because you got more pizza and more whatever else we got on the table. You got all that, right? But here's the thing: no more wealth was created. Do you understand that? There's not a single slice more of pizza. There's just a transfer of wealth in that situation, right? There's a transfer of wealth, right? So that's very simplified, and that also goes with services, right? That goes with services. You don't create more, doctor visits. You don't create more pool cleanings or anything like that just by printing money, right? So that's a very important thing to understand. You can have, people transfer. When you bought your Rolex, I know your Rolex. I think you told me the other day some of them gone up in value or whatever it was, but if you sold it back
gold's
then,
through the roof. Yeah, go ahead.
So you sold your Rolex whatever 10 years ago. Someone else has it and it's worth whatever. You sold it for 10 grand. It's worth 20 grand today. That's only one watch in the world, but this guy has it worth 20 and you sold it at 10. And maybe that 10 you invested. So people worry about the transfer. The transfer is a different thing. The creation of wealth is I need to eat. So, I do my work. I put roofs over people's heads. That's what I do. And you help with that because you insure it. You insure it. You help us, when there's unexpected stuff that we can keep going, right? And because of an active economy, other people create food. You have to look at the fundamental thing. Where's the fundamental thing? And the fundamental thing is you have to understand when money is cheap and when it's being printed, it can inflate assets well beyond the fundamental self-sustaining value, the ability of that asset.
No, I get it.
Itself, right? And that's the thing that people really have to learn. Because one last thing I'll say, and then I'll give it back to you.
Go ahead.
Be careful when people say it's a hot market. They go, Justin, you got to buy here. It's a hot market. Usually when they say hot, I'm like, whoa.
I'm out the door.
Yeah. So
so I understand that, right? So like the guy, he says, okay, all right, we all have $10. There's 8 pieces a piece or whatever, 6 pieces, and a guy comes in and says, I'll give you $50, right? So what he's doing,
half of us,
right? So what he's doing is there an intention there, right? So first of all, he's printing money because he has more capital, right? So, and what he's doing, if I hear it based on an economic level, he's purposely inflating the value of pizza, and the intention is to create a frenzy. So to create a false sense of a higher valuation, is that it, or am I not hearing it clearly? And then that starts the bubble.
Yeah, well, I don't know if there's a single group or person who does this intentionally so far, but in effect, that's
It's interesting though.
But there is a group like that, to tell you the truth. So what happened in the real estate bubble, for instance, a lot of people think that the free market, went bad. Free market always goes bad. I mean, that's the free side always goes bad, but it always checks itself. So it goes good and it goes bad, right? In free market, I do a bad deal, and I feel the feedback, and I go, oh, I learn, and then I do it better, and I do it better. It's mostly good, but there's always some bad because we make mistakes, and there's some bad actors. But what happened in the real estate market was you had interest rates kept artificially low by Greenstem for a long time, and then you had Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which were quasi-government agencies at that point, right? They weren't
$100 stocks at one point.
They weren't supposed to. So guys would make loans because when the interest rates are low, they have their margin. The banks have their lenders have their margin, all this kind of stuff. They got more volume going on, so they're churning out the loans, but they don't have responsibility because they package them and they sold them to Wall Street, right? So it's called moral hazard. I can make a lot of this money, but I don't get the repercussions when I'm wrong because I'm dumping them off. And the ones who created that moral hazard was the artificially low interest rates and the fact that you could package them, sell them to Wall Street, and Wall Street was buying them because they were backed by Fannie and Freddie Mae, which were quasi. So I guess the point that I'm really trying to make is you have to figure out that there's no such thing as free lunch. There's no such thing as free money, and when there's a huge amount of money flooding into any one place, you have to be responsible yourself to make sure that you're buying at a price that makes sense, and then you're putting on financing at a price that makes sense, and that you're doing the long vision thing, and you're not being, because real estate is not a point and click market. It's not like stocks. It's not like I made it. You're in it for the long term. So you got to understand the fundamentals.
No, I get it. And I hear everything that you're saying. So it sounds like in the economy, right? So if we're looking at trends, these are all bigger macro picture, right? Yeah. Is there's always a form of greed in economics, right? So people look for arbitrage plays. So when you have a low interest environment, right? Unregulated something in the government and an opportunity to profit, that's when the institutions or Wall Street step in. Then there's an arbitrage play with the government because Fannie and Freddie are regulated. They have to take this and they say, okay, there's a huge appetite for this. We can do this. And it's all this money greed based. And then that's exactly what happened. They came up with derivatives. They had governments, playing with the right rules and right regulations, which is unregulated at that time. And the next thing you know, right, Jerry Katz does over 300 condo conversions in 1975 construction, 4 units, 8 units, all over Broward and Dade County. Yeah. Why? Because everybody that, worked as a taxi driver or at the strip bar could qualify for a loan. Right. And that's exactly what we did at that point. So I was converting stuff that was running for $600 per door on multifamily, right? 1970s construction, right. Converting it with $20K, condo docs, things like that. And I was selling them at $140,000 a unit, right? Why? Because anybody with a pulse could qualify, like you said, on these no docs. And it was feeding this frenzy. So there is an opportunity, right? Yeah. When you recognize it. And I'm not saying I created this huge macro, environmental trend and bubble, but we definitely recognized it. And there was a wave that I could catch, right? Yeah. Because as a value add, a real estate investor, right? I saw an opportunity like, holy shit, it's not about raising the rents right now, right? So you got to keep your eye on the market. And yes, it led to the GFC, right? The global financial crisis and the collapse because of all of it. But if you are a real estate investor or if you are in the right place at the right time, and by the way, those condos still exist today. So to some degree, we created affordable housing that they could purchase at the time. But 50% of them became flippers instead because of the frenzy and so on and so forth. So I like to say one of the secrets of success, and I'm sure you'll agree, is we could be surfers. Justin, I know you surf in Nicaragua, right? And there's a wave coming, and you don't even have to be a good surfer, right? But if you see that, right, it's going to take you to the beach, right? You may not be the fastest guy. Is there anything that you see today that you can make our audience aware of, that it's easier to ride the wave? And I'll give you one more example. Like today we do content marketing. Right? It didn't exist. If you go 5 years, it was click, right? Pay per click. People made fortunes selling toothpaste, right? In 2011, you had an Amazon store. You could sell paper towel and do $1 million a month. That's done. So where is the opportunity today from your eyes?
I think it's in I think multifamily and also residential, so single family and multifamily select markets. So we have a shortage in this country of housing of around 4 million units. Some people say 3 to 5, whatever, but 4 is an often cited number. And so these frenzies that we're talking about do have real world impact. So after real estate crashed in '08, people weren't building for like 3 years, right? And so we got behind, and then we started to pick up. Boom! Then there's COVID. Then a couple of years, people didn't build. Then they started to build again. Now interest rates and insurance are skyrocketing. Now they stopped again. Now our population in this country is around 350 million people. Typically, our population growth is around 1% a year, right? And it's about 3.5 million people. Your average household is about 1 point, I don't know what it is, 2 point, whatever it is. Let's say it's 2 or something like
per
that.
household, right? Yep.
2 point something. I can't remember, but. So basically, just to keep up with your population growth, you need around something like 1.3 million, 1.4 million new residences per year, just to give a population growth. And then you have the old stuff that they're demoing, right, that you have to replace. And we already had a shortage of a few million from these crashes. And that's what, again, we think speculation, that's what I'm saying, a more responsible, general educated public, a more responsible policy would have created less of these booms and busts that affect the production. When 2008 happened, man, we didn't build millions of units that we could have built and should have built, right? So now we have 4 million to play catch up right now. Plus we got the 1.3 million or 1.4 million coming on every year, right? So for me, where's the need, right? And the need is housing. Housing is not an optional thing. It's like, it's not like some exercise equipment or something else. You need a roof over your head.
Is it your favorite asset class also because of that?
Well, yeah, it kind of is. I mean, I own a grocery-anchored shopping center, and I always thank our good friend Michael Rector. He kind of coached me a little bit. And I give reach out, just help me understand.
Right, he's a retail guy.
Yeah.
No, but I get what you're saying because food, shelter, water, right? You're grocery anchored, right?
Yeah.
So food, shelter, water. Food is provided, right? Yeah. Water is provided. I mean, in the United States today, but shelter, right? That's the base of the family. That's the base of where do you get protected from hurricanes? Exactly. Where do you, right? So shelter is always this need. I love it. I love the fact that you brought that up.
Yeah. So I love that. I love that, we're providing a need, right? We're not speculating. There's a little bit of, you do try to figure out a little bit where the future is. You look at your demographics, where's the population growing? Where's the job growth? And you try to make as informed a decision as you can. So we've only done right now, everything we've done is existing. So we bought old stuff and made it nice, right? We've turned ugly ducklings into swans. It's been our thing. That's what we did, and we did it. We've made plenty of mistakes, like I said, but we're self-taught and we self-performed everything. So we did our own construction. We've done about $60 million worth of our own construction. Roofs, windows, all that stuff, right?
Right.
And then we've done all of our self-performed, all our maintenance, all that kind of stuff.
You're completely vertical and horizontal, right? You do everything in-house. You're not using third party, nothing, right? Nothing. Okay. There's a lot of learning there. So go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to say we're vertically disintegrated. So
go ahead.
And sometimes a little better than that. But but now our next step, I do want to build ground up because we've done, like I said, $160 million worth of stuff roughly, and we've learned a lot. We've paid our dues. I would love.
Why did you choose to go vertical integration? Most people won't get this kind of inside access to elite operators. Don't be most people. Smash that like button, subscribe, and send this to the smartest investor you know or the beginner who's a rookie. That's why we created Real Estate Profit Boost. You choose to go vertical integration, right? So vertical, what we're
Yeah.
talking about for you
Yeah.
people. So Justin doesn't use third-party managers.
Yeah.
He has his own construction crews. He's
Right.
built his own roofing companies.
Yeah.
He's converted hotels to multifamily, all the above. And he chooses to do it all himself.
Right.
Tell us why and why that works for
I,
Pax
I,
Properties.
I think because, first of all, I have some investors invest with me. So we have about between 400 and 500 accredited investors. And, and I'm so grateful for their investments, because I didn't go to real estate school. I didn't know any real estate guys, didn't come from a real estate family, nothing. So I just started doing it little by little, and people would start investing with me. And then people from that financial publishing industry I was involved in started to find out, and I built this up. My opinion, Jerry, is there's nothing more valuable you can give a person who's healthy than trust and opportunity. That's the most valuable thing you get if you're healthy. So, and they give me that. And so we're able to build this. So like they give me this money, and think about them. So they work, they pay taxes on that money often, right? So sometimes they do it through IRA, so they're deferring, whatever, but
Right.
they pay taxes. Now they sweat for this thing, and now they're putting it somewhere for the future, for the kids, for their grandkids, for some cause that's important for their retirement, whatever it is. So now they have to trust it to someone, right? So now they give it to me. That's a sacred trust. I don't take that lightly at all. So I can't go to some guy and go, hey man, I'll fix your thing, I'll build it. Well, don't worry about it. We'll do 300. I got no
Right.
Because we managed perfectly. And look, there are good third parties out there. I know it, but I just wanted control. So look, from a strategic point of view, I had people tell me all the time, like people got MBAs in real estate, that I did it wrong, that I should have just hired this guy and hired that guy and scaled this
Right.
guy. And if I was a different person, they're right. But for me, I had to do the baby steps. I had to understand things as I went. It's just kind of how I'm wired, I guess.
No, listen, you've said you've never lost investor capital, never. And I've known Justin for a long time, right? And he gets like a sense of urgency, of stress to execute, right? And I get it, because the people that I know and that are syndicators, we know people that have lost 1,200 units because of variable rate loans, because they couldn't do a value add quick enough, right? And they were also more fee based. And it's happening everywhere. Most syndicators, by the way, people don't understand, they don't make money until their exit. So they put in these fees and all that stuff. So this is where his secret sauce is. And I'm sure this is what differentiates Justin. That's why, like me, once I learned about, we've known each other a long time, and I'm an LP in a lot of people's deals, right? And I don't underwrite deals. I underwrite operators. Yeah. And that's what I'm hearing, because I can change two numbers on an OM, right? And the IRR goes up 4%. Right? Yeah, it's that simple. But if you don't underwrite the general partner or the syndicator, you're dead in the water. So what's the differentiation, right, is what you're hearing. But it's also in his operations. He takes control of all the costs and things like that. So, and go ahead, finish your statement.
Thank you for that. And I'll tell you, since we're self-taught, honestly, we've made lots of mistakes. And so right now our ops are really good, and so I'll share one or two things I think that are interesting. So one of the things that happened to us was we grew fast, and so we might have started to overextend a little bit. But then when we got hit with the external things like COVID, we owned 6 hotels when COVID hit. 6.
I know. I know.
And we exited 4 of them. I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3 of them. Beautifully, profitably. 2 of them are doing amazing right now, and I'm sorry, there's 2 that were converted to apartments. So you get hit by external factors, but now that we're basically sort of stabilizing and finishing that kind of thing, our ops are really good. But it took a while for us to learn it, because I guess one idea I would have is that when you're scaling, at least in our case, you have. I believe in taking care of what you have, right? So we haven't bought anything in 3 years because we got hit by COVID. So we had to fix these 2 hotels that got whacked just as we kind of launched them. And then we also, we had some construction that we were finishing out in Oklahoma. So we had 4 things going on at once. COVID was the black swan, the kind of thing that was blindsided. But you got to take care of what you have is our thing. But it's easy to get overextended. That's you think you're successful. You think you really got to build a team that supports what you're doing. You have to have really good systems and processes. You have to have good KPIs, and you got to be on that stuff. I think one of my mistakes from recent years was we built a pretty good team. I'd say a good team in many ways, but as we started to get overextended, I overtrusted them. Not that
I've
they
been
were
there.
not that
Yep.
they weren't trustworthy as morally, but they bit off more than they could chew, and I let them bite off more than they could chew,
Right.
and then we had to fix all that. So I'm not sure
No,
where
I'm
that.
hearing the learning. I've done the same thing. When we scale companies, right, I have to delegate to grow, right? And I have to
Right.
put myself into superpower. And I can't do everything because you can't
Yeah.
scale. Otherwise, you'll be working 400 hours a week and you'll be dead from exhaustion.
Right.
I've seen operators like you, like me, we are scaling. And if I get too far away
Right.
from certain KPIs, I come back and I go, what?
Yeah. Yes.
What just happened? You're telling me
That's-
our software expenses tripled overnight and no one's got control of this?
Yeah.
Like stuff that you're not even looking at sometimes, right?
Yeah. Right.
So huge lesson for me too, right?
Yeah.
So you got to stick close to operations.
Yeah.
And most people that I know that are successful have made that mistake. I've made that mistake. And then I started bleeding money. And then now the operator gets called back in, right? And so that's a process of sometimes 15 years to find the right team. And of course, we want to trust, we want to delegate, we systemize, but we get caught off guard. So one thing I want you to know about what I heard from you, Justin, the two scenarios that you just brought out today, right, is number one, right? Justin bought 40, 50 units or whatever it was in Delray Lake Worth area at the top of the market, right? After his publishing business. You said that today.
Yeah, just before the top market, right? 2002,
Okay.
2006, 7, yeah.
Right. And then everything turned on him. And Justin said, okay, first of all, take care of what you own. So he figured out a way. But he saw instead of being depressed, calling it quits, being bankrupt, what did he say? He said, holy shit, this is the time to buy.
Right.
Because you couldn't time the market perfectly. Right. And he had an investor database built on trust and everything through his and they backed them up.
At that point, I didn't have. I had maybe 10 guys or something.
So now what Justin just said again, he may not even have noticed, but I caught it, is he had 4, 5 hotels in the middle of COVID.
6.
Right? 6.
Yeah.
Okay. All over the state. And guess what? He found out he was bleeding. Right. But what did Justin do? So today he's converted, right? While the bleeding, the original plan didn't work out both times. He said, okay, I missed the timing. COVID had Black Swan, right? Event. Really, how can I stop that? What do I do? He doesn't sit and cry and depress, call it quits, bankrupt, lose his units. He's converted hundreds of units to multifamily because the demand there in housing was better than the hotels because the hotels had a better model pre-COVID. Then the world changed overnight, which we know can happen at any time, right? And that's it. So what am I hearing? And the third point, Justin has never lost an investor money or himself money. Do you see the mindset of Justin Ford? Okay. That is why I tell you, when you underwrite deals, it's not about the deal, right? It's about the operator. Did you realize what you just said here, Justin? Because that's the mindset of champions,
Well, I
right?
appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
So first of all, those 40 units that I built up, I bought them going into 08 and so forth. And I knew it was going to crash. I was writing about it. But when they crashed, my properties were mostly paying for themselves, and they had amortizing debt on them. So we just let it. They were underwater. I couldn't sell them for what they were worth. But eventually, I sold all of them for profits. Those 40. Those 40 probably maybe, who knows, $500,000. I can't remember, whatever. And then we went out to build the 1,600. But the hotels, on those 6 hotels, Jerry, I had 2 small ones that when COVID came, I sold them. We were a contract already, and I sold them to a friend, and he's done well with those 2 small hotels. And then 2 other hotels were making money throughout COVID. Actually, they were making money throughout COVID, and we sold one of them last year at a really great price. But it was only these 2 because there was one hotel we had. It's called Seven Hill Suites, or it was called that. We bought it cheap. We put like more than twice what we paid for it into renovating it. It was the lowest rated hotel in Tallahassee. We went to number 1 in the market, Jerry, from 62 to number 1. We won TripAdvisor's top award. The mayor of the city, Bill or John Daly, came by, thanked me personally, and asked me to develop in the city. He said, "I'm giving you my sheriff's card, my building department." The next day, COVID hit. So that was so we were fortunate. We've won. I'm not even a hotelier, Jerry, right? So when I moved into the hotel space, we do apartments too, right? We had I don't know, maybe 1,000 units of apartments we've done, but we've won TripAdvisor's top award now something like 19 times. Like 19 times.
Right.
The hotel I bought in Ocala, we still have it. It's called the Equicin. Check out equicin.com. Number one rated in the market. We just won that. We've won that hotel, I think, 5 years, 6 years. We've won it 5 or 6 years in a row. It's a number one hotel in the market. It's my most profitable hotel. So I don't want, we're talking about hardships and all that.
Right.
Because we have an amazing team, we've got just great people. We've had incredible success, but success is the easy thing. It's what happens when the right hook catches you right on the jaw. What are you
Right.
going to do then? What are you going to do then? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? It's easy to prepare for success, right? But you got to know it's going to rain, and you got to be ready for those to see things through.
No, I get it. And this is why you want to watch this show with a notebook, okay? That's the bottom line. Because if you're
Right.
getting value already, I want you, number one, real quick, smash up those like buttons and share this, right? Because this needs to be shared with a business partner, with your team, and right, this is mentorship at scale. And this is exactly why I created Real Estate Profit Boost. And I know Justin's like me, we'd like to impact others. That's one of our favorite things, whether it's the hotel and everything. So quick question, since you have so many, you raise money, and I know Justin, he's got a loyal base because of his periodicals and stuff. What are the name of the newsletters now, and where do we find those websites and things like that?
Yeah, so I just do a weekly podcast for my investors. There's a closed loop thing for my
Okay.
investors, but people can
Got
get
it.
on our list, and we do some updates, monthly updates. Just go to paxproperties.com. You'll read about it.
PAX, right.
Yeah, Pax Properties. I got to update my photo. I look a lot younger there than I look here, but
He's too busy operating because you want to know why? Because I know Justin, he's got loyal 10,000 base, right? For 15, 20 years, right? And literally I know Justin can raise money on email and lots of it, right? Because he's never lost a dime, because of the integrity and the grit and everything you just learned from. But question, so you've had multiple assets, right? And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're the number one most profitable. What's your structure as a syndicator, right? Because most syndicators I know, they only raise money because they don't have enough trust in the industry. So they get a project under contract, they put a little skin in the game, and then they raise money, and investors feel safer. For some reason, based on what you're saying to me, I feel you have a different structure, and you're able to share capital across projects with maybe give us what you got there.
yeah, I will. Before that, I need to mention one thing. So you've been very generous in how you're talking about us, but they never lost a dollar is true. We never failed to make a positive return for investors. But I want to let people know we're not infallible. I've said that just before, but it's possible we could lose money. It's possible in these two conversions we could lose money. So I'm not trying to pretend that I'm whatever.
Got it.
No way. But I'm fighting to save investors' capital right now. And my investors who are in those deals, they know, like right now, if I finish this and so forth, when we sell it, I'll make nothing, because we'll talk about my structure in a moment, because my slice is only worth something after we make a certain return. On these deals, my investors, if I'm successful, might make 1% a year, right? 1 to 2% a year, right?
Got it.
That was versus negative 100% return. That's what they were looking at. Right? At the program, they were looking at negative 100. So if I make a 1%, we're like, woohoo! I mean, when you get hit by a once in a century pandemic right after you finish pouring money into a hotel, right? And your worst investment ever makes 1% a year, you might have a reasonable approach to real estate, a reasonable approach, right?
Right.
So, because we're talking about your worst thing, right?
Right.
Nine external factors. Okay, so let me. So now I'll get to your question. But I don't want people to think that we're not. We're not
listen.
But the main thing is this, Jerry. I'll give you this. Here's what I want to tell you. What we're about is we stick with it, right? And nothing's more important to us than honoring our obligations, right? So, I mean, when I say all these things, never we've never failed. We've never missed a payroll. We've never failed to pay a vendor. And times are really, really tough sometimes, right? But we look at the long term, and we look at the downside, and we know the upside tends to take care of itself. So it's just an attitude. Actually, I'll give you one more story to tell people when I start on that.
Go ahead.
I go, look, the most important thing in real estate is temperament. That's really the most important thing. I mean, there's sophisticated stuff you and I can, talk about that
Right.
movies might not understand for a while, but it's temperament. I told him, look, when you're a small investor, like back when I had 40 units, I'm like 365 days a year, 355 days, the sun is shining, there's a little bird singing your shoulder. But 10 days, it stinks. It's like, oh, what is this? And the
You're
guys,
standing in a septic tank.
exactly.
I've been there.
Yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
And the guys who make it through those 10 days, they're the ones who get to enjoy the 355. But when the crash, and by the way, with the crash of 08 happened, I'm going to tell you, a lot of people aren't going to like this, but most of the keys that were handed over did not have to be handed over. I'm going to tell you, it's those 10 days. I'm done. I give it to the bank. There's a whole culture of getting it to the bank. I had
Mindset.
friends call me. I had friends call me, like, dude, I'm like, but your rent will cover you. Just rent it. Oh, I don't want to rent it. The guy's paying the net. So everyone's giving keys, so they're giving keys back. I'm sure there were people legitimately caught, but I've seen more people just decided to walk away. And then
Right.
even
Exhaustion.
even from a practical point of view, when the real estate was super cheap in 09 and 10, and I started buying like crazy, I left like a 1% money job to do real estate full time. They couldn't get back in the game because their credit was gone, right?
Right. Got it.
Yeah. So anyhow, all right. So going back to
No, listen, there's huge lessons there, right?
Right.
It's like I have a saying, I say SSN, right? And yesterday wasn't the best day for me, right? I had like a crazy day. I was chaotic. Things didn't go my way. Then I find my dad's in the hospital, right? All this stuff. So I have a saying. I say SSN. I've had it. I actually got it from a podcast from the CEO of Blackstone. I swear, like
Oh, really?
5 years ago. Yeah, I was listening. So whenever things go wrong, first of all, I breathe, right? That's the key.
Yeah.
In through your nose, out through your mouth, get back up here. And then I say SSN, not social security number. I say,
right.
stay calm,
Yeah.
stay positive, and never give up, right? And I'm telling you, one day I don't do tattoos, but that's one I would do. Because,
like that.
and then breathe, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, and that's what, it's really what separates people, right? And then a lot of people ask this question, right? Like, and just as a boxer, he does all these kind of things. So, is Johnny Bravo? Is he born or is he made? Right? Because Johnny Bravo, no matter what, you know what? He turns back. We left 40 people behind. He doesn't have any fear. He doesn't care that the bullets are flying over his head, but he runs back. And somehow he saves the 40 people, right? But that decision is made when? In a blink of a second, right? It's not the guy that says, I'm done, I'm handing back the keys. They're not using logic, they're not using thought processes, they're exhausted and they give up. So what's it, and we try to surround ourselves with those type of people with integrity, of course, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. Are they born or are they made, Justin? It's a tough question, right?
I believe that everyone has the ability to develop, positively, personally and professionally, and I got to develop a lot more myself for sure, despite how many years I got behind me already. But I try not to categorize people as, irreparable or hopeless or anything like that.
Of course, right.
I use the word like loser. That's.
I believe in everybody. That's my problem. Go ahead.
In bad places, but they're able to, hopefully get that light bulb turned on and move in a more positive direction. That goes for me in a lot of my personal life too. So there's times when I want to not drink as much as I can drink sometimes on a weekend or something like that. You got to fix up. So as far as I think anyone can put themselves in on a positive path, whatever positive path means for them, whatever that means for them, right? And that's one of the reasons I resist a lot of the messaging out there that tends to encourage people to think of themselves as victims, right? And
Right.
Because when there's something about responsibility, if you let's say Jerry, you work for me and I'm unhappy with something you did, and I say and you're like trying to blow it off, oh, it was this guy, it was that guy, or you weren't clear on what you want, all kind of stuff, but it's obvious that you should have known that. The moment you take responsibility, Jerry, what you're saying, what you're doing for yourself is you're going, boom, oh yes, I have the ability to respond. You're empowering yourself. I have the ability to respond. But if you're deflecting, you're saying, oh, I'm a victim, it was him, I couldn't do anything, right? And it's not about blame, but responsibility really helps you build, your own set of skills, your own
100%.
your
Yeah.
own ability to persist and see it through.
I'm going to tell you a funny story. There's a beautiful woman that we know by the name of Eloise Gonzalez, right?
Absolutely. Oh, man.
Right. So she was woman, right? She's probably, I don't know, it doesn't matter how, but
Right.
she's an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
And she was voted woman entrepreneur of Miami. She's a Cuban woman, right? Many times, very large flooring company and stuff. So I met Eloise. I mean, she's one of the most dear souls you've ever met in your life. You couldn't say one negative thing about Eloise Gonzalez. Never. So, and she runs big companies, her son, everything like that.
Yeah.
So I met her 15 years ago. I have a book. It's sitting over here in the other office, right? She handed me a book called, she goes, I just came back from a Darren Hardy retreat. It's called The Compound Effect. She goes, Jerry, take this book, right? And I read chapter number 2. And she goes, read chapter number 2. It changed my life. And chapter number 2 says, everything is your fault. Everything in life is your fault.
That's great.
Everything in your life is fault. And I'm like, in a relationship, is it 50-50? And I'm like, yeah, it's 50-50. We both, no, it's not. It's 100%, right?
No,
You
that's
got to
great.
give 100%. So all of a sudden, I'm reading this book,
Yeah.
and it changed my life, right? Because if you can live by this simple concept, and is it Justin's fault that COVID happened? No, but it's not the point. If Justin blames the failure of the hotel on COVID, then it is his fault. So what it changed is like, it gave me power, right? To control the controllable, which is just me, right? So it gives simple examples, right? Are you late because of traffic? You're not late because of traffic.
Exactly, right.
Right. I love when people come into my office or interview. Oh, I'm late because of traffic. I look at them and I'm like,
Nope.
I would shift the blame, right?
Yeah.
And they go, what do you mean? I go, I'm late because I didn't plan for the traffic.
Yeah, exactly.
Now the traffic doesn't have control of my life, right?
100%.
Exactly. And I'll just tell you, my son was studying with my mother, and he's frustrated, right? And I go, Max, you and Grandma, he goes, Dad, I can't. Grandma can't help me out with my schoolwork. She doesn't know what she's doing. I look at him, I go, shift, because I taught him that concept. He goes,
Nice.
how do I come up with a way to work with Grandma so her and I can be productive?
Wow.
I'm like, yes, that
That's
changes
amazing.
everything, Justin.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what you've explained from the beginning
Yeah.
of this podcast on all of your deals, on everything. When it's always my fault, right? My wife's not having sex with me, right? Let me blame her, be the victim, and you'll lead to a divorce. How do I come up with a way for me and my wife to spend Wednesday and Thursday, not with the kids or whatever it is? It's my fault. So I love that concept, and it's huge learning. And again, folks, like, subscribe, and share this stuff. So we don't have that much time. So I wanted to ask you a couple things on real estate, right? And then I'm going to ask you a couple of little lightning rounds about the future. Okay. Number one, Justin is the developer, and this is his, right? It's called the CAP strategy: cash flow, amortization, and positive leverage. Yeah. Tell us what that is.
All right, real quick. So there's 4 ways you can make money in real estate according to the way I see it. Cash flow, that's, collect your rent, pay your bills, put money in your pocket. Amortization. Amortization is a word most people don't understand. It's Latin for basically comes from the word death. Basically what it means is with every loan payment, you're killing off your loan. You're paying it down, right? Then there's positive leverage. Leverage is a two-edged sword. It can be, it can cut you, it can hurt you, but it can be a useful tool, like fire. It can warm you or it can burn the house down, right? So you got to use positive leverage. Positive leverage is when the money you borrow, the property pays for it and creates a cash cushion. So if things go wrong, you can cover it and helps pay down the mortgage. So positive leverage helps you increase your return without dramatically increasing your risk, right? Then the last thing is appreciation.
Understood.
Now, appreciation is the shiny object. That's what everyone chases, right? Everyone appreciates when the things you own goes up in value, right? Everyone loves
right.
Whether it's my house, my stocks, whatever, whether I did anything or not, right?
Right.
And but the trouble about appreciation, it's the only one of those 4 things you cannot control. You can control whether you buy at the price that cash flows or not. You can control whether you put an amortizing loan on it or not. You can control whether you combine those two in a way that produces positive leverage, but you can't control appreciation. It doesn't matter if you're a PhD in economics, you can't control it. There was a PhD in economics who's the head of the National Association of Realtors, who in 2005 wrote a book called Are You Missing Out on the Boom? My answer was, I hope so, right? But that guy was just talking about prices going up. He was focusing on something he couldn't control. So here's the thing, Jerry. Let's say I buy a property.
Love it.
These numbers. I buy a $100,000 property, right? And two guys do it. One guy goes, "Oh, $100,000 property. I know it's going to double because I'm smart. I understand everything. Appreciation. I see my friends getting rich. This is worth 50, now it's worth 100." So they borrow money. They borrowed it, 15% or whatever it is, and they're like, "Oh, this is going to double. This is no problem." Me, I go in, whatever, I scrape 20,000 from investors, whatever it is. I put it down. I put a low rate mortgage on it, right? Now the thing crashes the next 5 years, right? And so the guy who borrowed at 15%, he's out, right? He can't cover it even with rents or something else, right?
Done.
Now let's say it stays down and it takes 30 years to get back to even. In the worst case you can imagine, I just turned 20 into $100,000 by having my tenants pay off the mortgage in 30 years. In like a horrible case scenario. In the normal case scenario, over the case, it's about 4 or 5% a year, which is going to double around every 25 years. So that 100 is going to be worth 300. So I turned 20 into 300 in a normal case scenario. But the thing is, because I focused on what I can control, right? And that's why it goes right back to what we talk about responsibility. What can I control? What can I
Perfect parlay, right? Right. Well, it's so funny, right? It's back to the response. You can't control the controllable. You can't control appreciation. You can maybe catch a wave, right?
Yeah,
and by the way, in '08, right? Since I lost everything on Wall Street, right? Because I couldn't control it, right? And that's why I got out of Wall Street, because I couldn't take it anymore, and the greed and all that stuff. And I realized I wasn't really, what value am I giving people, right? So at the end of the day, in 2008, I was a freaking genius, I thought, right? I had two senior partners at that point, and we exited a portfolio with close to $30 million in equity between the three of us. We looked like geniuses because we were studying the trends. We had the girl in the front, I own Investors Realty, Old Florida Mortgage, all that stuff. And the girl at the front was tracking the MLS and inventory manually. Okay. And we saw the spike. Wayne Blackburn, he's in North Carolina now, was a mentor of mine, right? He was always into these economist newsletters, gold, this, that. And so we sold 90% of our holdings. And I was asked for the next 2 years to be speaker, to do this. And I was like a genius. Really? Now I look back, I'm like, ba-bam, right? Why did I sell everything? So I get it 100% on all that kind of stuff. So you can't control it. You can only control the controllable. And looking back, I wish I still own those properties. So that's what I'm hearing on your philosophies.
Let me tweak that if I can. I know we're going to wrap up, but let me just tweak it. So
we're good.
I do macroeconomic research. Don't get me wrong. Like in 2006 and 2007, I wrote a book, and it was called Secret Value in Growth Cities. And I told people it was a bubble in Boston and LA, Miami, and I showed the ratios, how we were selling at 30 times the annual rent, and how we were selling it at, like 8 times the household income. It was crazy, right? And then I identified the best markets to buy. This was before it crashed. And my number one market was Austin, Texas. And and I identified that in 2006.
That's actually one of my questions, that you invest in these markets before the rest. How do you do it? So there it is.
So I'll tell you how I identified Austin. But I was right. But I was a small investor then. So when you couldn't buy cash flow in Miami anymore, you remember that. You couldn't touch cash flow in 2006. No. Everything was ridiculous. I went to Austin. I was a small investor, but we bought 2 4-unit properties, right? I made $100,000 in each or something like that. And but the point is, you can identify trends. But here's the thought that ties it together. Do your macro research. Find your trends. But this is for me, when I take action identifying the trend, I want to do it in a way where I set it up so I can focus on what I can control. Where I'm not just throwing the dice on red. I'm focusing on what I can control, right? So that you can combine the two. It's not like you don't have to pay attention to trends. I absolutely do. But once you take action, set up your business plan, your underwriting, so you're focusing on what you can control. For me, that's
100%. Like, obviously, it's worked, right? And I get it, and it's the same thing. I can control the controllable. Me, I can't control my spouse. I can't control my kids, and then every time I try, it blows up in my face, and they get further away. So I've learned those lessons. So. I love how that parlayed from the real world, life, to real estate and everything, and exactly why he's never lost a dime for investors, and he shifts because he thrives on that philosophy. You're a victim. It's tough. So looking back, right, Justin and I don't know, about 4 or 5 years ago, we're in something called the South Florida Commercial Real Estate Forum, right? He invests in undervalued markets. So we present deals. It's a learning and growing community that him and I really created. And it's just to learn from, the titans of real estate. So he finds undervalued markets. He spots them early, and then he executes. So about 3-4 years ago, you presented to us Oklahoma,
Yeah.
and and around the room were like, what? And one guy's like, what? Oklahoma? And I'm thinking insurance, like hail, right? It's almost as bad as Florida.
Right.
And guess what? So tell us, how do you find? And yes, he's successful there now, and you're fully leased up and stabilized, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And years later, so how do you spot those early before
Okay.
they hit everyone's radar because you blew us away,
Yeah. So
right?
yeah. So the Oklahoma right now is it was a deep, it had good value and steady growth. So down here in
Mhm.
South Florida, you had hyperbolic growth and you had little to no value, right? So we decided to just play the long game in Oklahoma, and we also knew that markets, when they get hot or certain things happens, the big money goes elsewhere. So you had New York money in COVID come down here, you had California money come down here. And in New York, they're willing to pay. They used to be paying $500 a foot, depending on if it's luxury, 1,000. And
Right.
now stuff here,
1,000 a foot. Yeah.
500. It's now doubled, right? So that more expensive money came down here, and I figured to a lesser extent it would also go to Oklahoma, and it has. And it's happening slowly, but I'm not looking for the big home run. I'm just looking for a good risk-adjusted return. And so my thing for Oklahoma is very similar to when I identified Austin in 2006. In Austin, there were 5 things I looked at. It had low rent to prices to rents. It had low prices to household income. It had like a third to a fifth of what the bubble markets were, right? The ratios.
Gotcha.
It had a diversified economy. It had tech. It was state capital. It had the music industry. It had university. It had local business. It had previously suffered a little bit of a crash when the tech industry crashed in '99, right?
Yep.
And then on the soft criteria, everyone I ever spoke to loves Austin, right? So, but it was mostly those hard criteria. Plus, it had steady job growth and population growth over the short and long term, right? So it had all those factors going for it. Tulsa is the same way, and Tulsa is amazing. Tulsa is like a small little city, but it's really cool. It's like a sort of like a beatnik, blue collar city. It's got the oil and gas. It's got the Route 66 history. It's
Right.
got it's got Woody Guthrie history. It's got more murals than most cities you can imagine. It's a really cool place, and it's affordable. And I would go. I remember I got friends out there who are doctors and also investors, and they're one of their nannies came from California because she was paying $2,000 for one bedroom, so she goes to Tulsa for an $800 one bedroom, and then her family comes out, and then I meet a waitress the same way, and then you hear about a couple of professionals moving the same way. So it's not going to be a huge influx, but it's steady growth. So you have deep value with steady growth, and that's the play right there in Tulsa, and Oklahoma.
If this video helped you think bigger or execute smarter in any way, I want you to like this video. I want you to subscribe and share it with someone who's scaling. Real success multiplies when we elevate each other.
Okay, so steady growth and deep values is where we went on this one. But there's another property we have in Melbourne that I bought for $2 million. We sold for $16 million, and we put $7 million into it. But also for like 10 years, it produced something like $500,000 a year for investors. So it was really a big home run. But while I was in Melbourne a few years ago, I was looking at the apartments. I was interested. I knew it was a growth market because they got Raytheon there, they got SpaceX, they got all these technology corridor, and I didn't buy it because the prices, the cap rates were small, right? And but what I missed there was the opposite. Was I didn't look enough at how rents were growing because of the growth of the industry and people pouring in, and not only the growth of jobs, but the growth of high-paying jobs. So I actually missed that. So I'm not trying to say that the way we've approached it is the only way, but you can do both. Even if you're speculating on growth, then the way you mitigate that, if you want to mitigate your risk on that, you can buy with a low cap rate, let's say. Then you probably want to use less debt, right? Which means you're going to make, if you are right, you're going to make less of a return. So be less greedy. We talked about greed before, right? Use less debt, and you can buy into that where you still buy it at a rate where you're covering your debt, and you're creating a cash cushion for those rainy days. And so you can do it both ways. But in Tulsa, I saw a lot of what I saw in Austin, not to the same degree, but a lot of what I saw, where it had all that steady job growth and population growth. I think its job and population growth for like 10 or 20 years was a little bit above the national average, but the prices the dollars you're paying per dollar of rent were much better than in the high growth markets. But going forward, Jerry, I'm going to probably go back into the high growth markets into South Florida, but I'll be
Interesting.
but I'll be
Right.
but I'll be adjusting how much debt I use, and I'll still be looking to enter it with a plan that helps me focus on the things I can control and not put all my eggs on things I can't control.
Right. No, there's some key takeaway, right? That, and it's interesting that you said what you just said, because I didn't realize something for a couple of weeks. So I did a recent video on, it's called Crash or Cash, South Florida, because there's an obvious softening in the market, right? The median home price is down 15, 20%, condos, all this kind of things, interest rates. But here's the thing, right? What I've seen from my client base is core players with liquidity, right, and low debt are the safety net in this market. Right. So I see deals getting done on the insurance side, right? Because they're acquiring, and they know their core markets. The second thing that you mentioned, which I didn't realize, is, you hear about, people moving to Port St. Lucie, people moving north, Miami-Dade's getting too expensive, Broward's getting too expensive. But here's the joke, right? What I saw when we did the video is statistics, right? Data wins all arguments for me. Number one, Goldman Sachs just moved to West Palm Beach.
Right.
Citadel just closed their headquarters, right? A $60 billion hedge fund, right? And now they're building a tower in Miami. So what I'm seeing is Wall Street money is flooding South Florida, right? Yeah. Why? Because obviously we have good legislation, zero income tax, right? Our governor, all that good stuff. So where everybody's saying, hey, the market was so elevated, now it's coming down, and now it's going to crash, and there's fear in the streets. That's what you hear all over the news. What I'm seeing is, like you said, I'm seeing high income earners, right? And huge, massive Wall Street money is flooding South Florida, like a high tide. Right. So is that one of the reasons that you're going back into this market? Is the opportunity now?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons. The other reason is I never want to take a connecting flight again in my life.
I get it. Hey,
we got our good friend Goran.
Get a pilot's license. Yeah,
Goran has like 1,200 doors, like mostly individual properties, and he won't buy anything that's more than like a 10-minute drive or something. And
from his house, right? Yeah,
amazing. He's done amazing. But yeah, I think. But when we go into South Florida, for instance, and again, I would like to build, but the way to so now since we're dealing with higher prices and therefore lower yields, and therefore if you're using your normal what you try to use in leverage, 3-to-1, 3 parts of debt to 1 part equity, you might want to pare that down and say, okay, I'm going to go in at 50-50 to start, or 60-40. I'm going to have more of a cash cushion, less risk. It's going to mean less returns for me and my investors, but we're going to lower the risk. And then if a lot of things end up going in your favor, where the market does take off and rents go up and values go up and even interest rates come down, then later, now you can refi and you can pull some of that money out, right? Rather than from the get-go be so aggressive and bet overly much on your premise, on the premise, which is what you need. You need a premise, right? You need your macro supposition, your trend analysis, all that stuff. But to bet everything on that and not focus on what you can do, how you structure your deal, how you finance it. That's that's
no, I mean, right. I agree 100%. And today, so I recently spoke at a Marcus and Millichap conference, right? It was a multifamily symposium, a lot of smart people. There's about 600 people in the audience. And the guy next to me on a panel, super savvy, multifamily institutional grade, was sitting with me. First, how he started, he goes, okay, everyone in the room who's an investor in Florida, raise their hand. About 250 people raised their hand. And then he said, okay, keep your hand up if you've done a deal in the last 6 months.
Right.
97% went down. Right? Yeah. And I looked at him and I'm like, this guy knows what's going on, right? Like, I like the way he was thinking. Yeah. And he goes, that's exactly why I'm buying in core markets right now. Right? Yeah. And I go, why couldn't they get deals done? Because they're afraid of low cap rates. Yeah. Right? And there's like a stalemate going on here. And then I said, why are you afraid of low cap rates? Same answer. Right. Different type of leverage structure. Right. He believes that interest rates will come down within the next year and a half, maybe half a point. Yep. So again, exactly what you said. The savvy money, or in core markets, demographics, where's the money flooding? And they're doing deals with low leverage today, knowing 5 years down the road, that's their big payday. Would
Yeah.
you agree? Yeah.
Yeah, I would. I would. And there's another thing about here. We're heading towards a supply cliff, right? So we had all these units coming online the last couple of years, right? But no one started new construction, or very few people did the last 2 years. Interest rates, insurance shot up, and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have all these units coming online. So it seems like there's going to be a glut for a while. But again, remember what we talked about. We're 4 million short nationally. We have a lot of pockets where we're short of housing, especially here in South Florida as well, affordable housing. And people are not building right now. So that glut that is going to be temporary, and then there's going to be the demand is going to be exceeding supply again, or there's a good strong possibility for that, which means higher rents as well. So
Simple economics, right?
yeah. So again, but none of this is 100% given, but it's a reasonable, very reasonable proposition. And if you structure your deal accordingly, even if you're only part right, and even if you're wrong, and you structure your deal well, you'll at least protect your assets, and you may do well in the long term.
So you mentioned earlier that your next step, the future PAX Properties is probably new construction. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's what I'd
All
like
right.
to do. Yeah.
And what are you choosing to do that because you can't buy? Because our thing is, right, we buy sometimes real estate by the pound, right? If you can replace an asset in a market where the demographics and and the supply is low, below replacement cost value.
Right.
So regardless of the current rent or the cap rate, if your debt structure is correct, know no one can replace that. So do you have a hidden strategy right now? Because it's with, new construction. Tell us a little bit about that and what you're thinking.
Yeah, my thought is replacement value is if you're buying existing, you have to be aware of replacement value, right? So
Mhm.
let's say you're buying a C asset here in West Palm Beach in a working class neighborhood away from the glitzy the emerging glitzy downtown there. You
Mhm.
might be buying stuff for $300 a foot, old stuff, 50-year-old stuff, right? Sometimes
If
250.
you're lucky.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. But if you get a good deal on land, and if you are an efficient builder, you could build for 250 a foot, right? So who's gonna? So if I have a 50-year-old product, even if I make it nice, and I'm in at 250 or 300 a foot, and you have a brand new product next to me at about the same cost basis, you're going to be getting much higher rents than I will, right? And we're both going to have the same. If we're leveraged the same amount, we're both going to have the same debt service. So you always have to be aware of replacement costs. So if you're buying old stuff that's been around for a while, it could be in a good location and so forth. Ideally, you want to be below replacement cost, but especially if you're in an area where there's a lot of land to build new stuff, right?
Mhm.
If you're in a core urban infill area where there's not a lot of land to build, you can pay more for that old stuff. But my thing is, I just really want to be part of creating housing. I mean, it's so hard for people who are working to buy houses. I
Yeah.
mean, you take
And that's what you hear about at every symposium, right? Right. What about, workforce
the
housing, right?
teacher and the fireman and
Correct.
it's really hard.
And right. And wages are not going up.
Right,
Like Key West, you know that there's
right,
buses running every 20 minutes from Homestead to Key West
right,
because the workforce cannot live in the Keys because of the price of real estate.
right,
It's a real problem, right?
right.
So I don't have a solution, but maybe new
Yeah.
construction if you could buy land cheap enough, right? Or maybe one thing is maybe we petition it for building in the Everglades or something like that. They got to move the development line or something,
Well, I
right?
mean, even if you're
I,
building,
I don't know.
you're going to have to commute way out here. But you know,
Correct.
uh, Governor DeSantis, I thought, did a great thing with the Live Local Act, where if you're buying commercial property,
Hmm.
your density now becomes whatever the maximum density is within 1 mile. So if you're buying an old shopping center and it was 20 units per acre, and you got 10 acres there, but within a mile they got 50 units per acre. Now you can really build that out. And I know people, there's that real NIMBY thing, and I understand that kind of thing, but
Are people chasing dirt? Because that's so the Live Local Act, right? Because we could talk about that for an hour, right?
Right,
What I'm seeing is people are chasing cheap dirt because of it, right?
right,
Like near the Hard Rock Casino, there was
right,
warehousing, there was like gas
right,
stations on corner
yeah,
lots, and all of a sudden I'm seeing transactions happen, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I see that happening. Do you think at one point maybe how will that change the market and maybe lead to overdevelopment or right because you can buy cheap dirt now. That's what they're doing. Where you couldn't buy high density multifamily, now you can buy a gas station on the corner a mile from the Hard Rock and build 400 units. How do you think that's going to play out, short term or long term? And is there
Well,
opportunity or right?
yeah, I think
It's tough.
yeah, I believe if you look at if you have strong demand in the market, you have undersupply, and you're you're tying up your land, and you get everything is possibly close to getting shovel ready before you're committed on the land. Um, and then here's the thing where the cities could help. The cities could help if they really don't make the inspection such a 1,000-year process, right?
Right.
Right. And they could also help with
100%.
tax abatements and all that kind of stuff. But I just think it's
There was a key thing you said. It was the art of the deal on how he ties up a piece of property and make it shovel ready. So he has a small risk, right, with a deposit that may be non-refundable. The landowner is willing to do that, but that's contract, right? He understands contracts, and he understands that I can tie up a small piece of money for a long period of time before I get my big debt, right? And do shovel ready. So just for those newbies, that's what he's saying. So we probably should do a freaking show on contracts, right? Yes. But that's what he's saying. But go ahead. He's leveraging. It's an option contract with low risk, high reward, but he knows how to do it because he's in control. Go ahead.
You probably want to go into the city and talk to him and get him on your side. Have the local meetings with the neighborhood if it's an issue, the new development. But get the opinion, get the support of all the key players involved as early as you can before you're committed and you have all this money that you have to pay for that's sitting idle forever. So it's all that pre-work. And again, I've never done a single ground up. So this will be new to me, and I'll be bringing on the right strategic partners as we do it.
I can't wait because I'm so tired of value adds and that kind of stuff, right? And I'm tired of it. And then when I see these people at this point in my career, I'm not going back into the septic tanks, right? I'm not going to change the toilets. I've done it all. I've had my car stolen, all the keys to my apartments. I've done it all, right? Yes. So I love when I see new construction, right? Because peace, right? And things like that. And so this isn't just a podcast. It's a blueprint for building wealth the right way. Subscribe, like, and drop a comment because the people you surround yourself with will determine your next level. So just real quick, and then I'm going to give you a couple of lightning round questions too. But of course, let's talk insurance, which most people treat as a line item. Okay. But Justin, without Jerry, without my insurance agent, he treats it like a strategy, right? Yeah. And I've seen it firsthand, right from the beginning. And you actually taught me a little bit, a lot. You got it. So we had the privilege of working together. Right. Your portfolio recently was close to $1 million in insurance costs. And I put out a video, right, and him and I are in touch, that the market right now, believe it or not, on anything over $5 million in replacement cost value, there is a disruptor, right? And it's as much as 50% off. Right. So just call me this. So tell me, number one, how do you treat insurance, right? Is it a line item? Is it, hey, my broker says this and things like that? And then tell us, because we just took you through the TAO process, total asset optimization. Yep. By the way, I just talked to your advisor to my right today. He goes, oh, you're on with Justin? He goes, wait till I call him today. So he's because he's excited, right, to help and stuff like that. So long story short, he's got around $1 million in insurance, and at the end of the day, he's going to have $650,000 in insurance. But listen, what's $400,000 increase in NOI? Right. On your cap rate, on your bank? Are you kidding me? It's unbelievable. So tell us your experience and why. When you heard the call, right, because we've worked a lot with insurance together, but not everything because he diversifies, right? You trust but verify, right? I get that. And then all of a sudden you heard the call, and we're going to save him close to $400,000 at a 5.5 cap. That's, I don't know, $4 million in value, $5 more million in a DSCR loan, and so on. So tell us your experience and how you treat expenses in your business. One of the big, because I use it as a, what I do. Right. Go for it. Yeah.
So, you started insuring a lot of our stuff, and you and I became friends, 10 years ago, something like that. Yeah. But I also put a friend of mine who was in insurance. I put him in the game, and then as insurance started to go up, I realized I would talk to you guys. Oh, I need the broker of record letter. Jerry's got it, so I can't bid. I'm like, whoa. Right. And then finally, this young kid came in and he underbid one of you guys on some property or something like that. I was like, okay. So now I had you guys competing, and I had to, because the way I look at it, Jerry, I would give you all the business if I knew it was always this. But I don't mind paying an extra couple of percent, whatever, but I have fiduciary responsibilities. And like you just
100%.
said, if I'm paying on my portfolio a couple $100,000 more, that's $4 or $5 million less I can sell it for, or whatever it is, $3 or $4 million less I can refinance, all that stuff. So I owe it to people. I can't just go, hey, these my buddy, I'm going to pay an extra $50,000 a year to somebody, right?
Of course, right.
But insurance to me, from my perspective, and Jerry, by the way, I'll give you a plug. Love Jerry. Jerry knows his business like no one I know, and he does his best by people. So Jerry's amazing. But what I did, I was so frustrated in insurance as a customer. I'm like, this is kind of a corrupt industry. Not you, Jerry. Not. But I mean, the
No,
way it's
listen, that's why I built the business, because
yeah.
I saw the same thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why
Yeah.
you used to be just the multifamily guy.
Listen,
And you were
it's
doing
totally
this.
corrupt.
Right.
Yeah, I opened it because I got derailed by insurance, right? It went up 200 grand overnight, and I'm like, where did my NOI go?
Exactly.
I'm like, what just happened? Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So I think I tell people I cracked the insurance code, as a thing. And the thing is, because it's a non-competitive market. It's like, oh, here's my broker. No, he's got all the carriers locked up there, and you can't compete. So I was really frustrated. And finally, we created the spreadsheet, and we had all our policies when they were renewed. We had the whole history. And I saw some of my things had tripled. With
Correct.
different, even one or two with you, but it wasn't your you.
No, the
didn't-
market
you're
the
gonna
market
end up-
got
you're gonna end up
destroyed
with
in
all my
22.
stuff.
Yeah.
You're gonna with
Right.
all my stuff. I know, but probably almost certainly, because you guys are doing an amazing job, and your associate Jaime is incredible. But so so what I understood was it was non-competitive. It was a non-competitive market. So I figured out a way. I was making you guys kind of compete in a clumsy way. I'd be like, oh, we're bumping into each other. But I figured out, we created a spreadsheet. We had all our history, whatever. We put the policies there. So you have the policies, and then we found out about the Accord forms. The Accord forms are where you describe your property. I mean, I knew
Right.
about it forever, but I wasn't paying attention. So we got the
Updates,
policy
square
there.
footage, year of
We got
roof, all
the
that.
policy,
Yep.
we got the Accord forms. Now I go, hey, Jerry, here's the link to all my properties. You could see exactly our coverage, what the properties are about. But you crushed it, because now people can see, I know what it's bidding on. And you guys, I'm going to tell you, on this one property, Jerry sent me, no, between like two properties, just on the wind and the hazard, saved me, I think, was almost about $105,000. And we're just
Right.
getting started on the other one. So real.
Here's the
plug.
bottom line is listen, I've known Justin for a long time, and here's the issue, right? And you and I, him and I know each other, right? The industry of insurance is revenue based, okay? It's greed based. It's commission driven. Whether you're on the wholesalers, whether you're on the freaking retail end and everything like that. The biggest challenge, right, is they don't understand real estate, right? They understand revenue. And the market in high risk coastal states can literally fluctuate overnight. You get two storms and there it goes. Everybody who had low rates, the carriers go out. Everything that's left doubles and triples in price. Well, as a real estate investor, we can't deal with that, right? But the insurance guy who went to risk management school and works at a Fortune 500 company, he doesn't get it. When he sees, and he's taught to overinsure everything, when Justin and I know there's probably a 1% chance or less, right, that you're actually going to file a claim. Why? Because we insure 3,500 real estate investors. How many claims a year do I file? 5? Right? So there's the numbers, right? So the point is the industry comes out of risk management school. My son comes in here. He does an internship. He's telling guys like Justin, you need terrorism. You need sinkhole coverage. You need law and ordinance, right? But he's trained that way.
Yes,
and
exactly.
then, right. So, and then when the market implodes and it's a $100,000 policy that pays 10% commission to the retailer and then 4% to the wholesaler, because it's 5 layers deep, right? Bing, 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 bing.
Yep.
I just doubled my money. Really? You just destroyed my NOI and Justin's profitability for his investors and everybody.
Yeah.
So my biggest challenge, right, was to create a workforce of advisors, right, that focused on real estate investors. So it took me years, because every time I would recruit from the industry, I would have the same problem. I was literally at a point 5 years ago where I hired somebody and I go, you just sold our client a $32,000 policy when you knew you could have went to Citizens at $19,000. It paid 5% Citizens. The other one paid 12. And this guy's name was Steve. I look at him. I go, "What's up?" I go, "You're fired." That's it. Yeah. I go, "Of course, right?" And that's what happens. So we get people who call us, right, and they're like, "No, I'm not going to show you this." The industry has screwed with people.
Yeah.
right? Because they don't understand what I call LTV, lifetime value of a client.
Yeah.
So when I call Justin or when I call anybody else and say, listen, we have a process called total asset optimization, I need everything. I need everything. I want the whole portfolio because there's buying power, there's this, there's that. So I put out a video 4 weeks ago saying the industry's 50% down. My mother calls me and says, Jerry, does that mean you have to sell 2 times more business? And I look at my mom and I go, holy shit, you are smart. And I said, no, right? Justin has $300,000 worth of policies with us. We just turned those into 180, and now he handed us the other $1 million that he's got, and then it turns down into 650.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's the key. But here's the thing, and the biggest challenge for me and my culture is that it says everywhere, LTV, lifetime value. I have to, even to this day, manage it, right? So now picture this. On the broker side, right? The wholesaler that's got Skyway or Amherst, these new programs. I'm dealing with one wholesaler who's got $5 million in premium, right? He's renewing your accounts, okay? He knows that account in the open market today where all the disruption is happening, if he sends you a renewal quote from 100 to 70, he just lost revenue. Yeah. So we have to call the wholesaler and say, listen, if you don't go where the market goes, what do you want me to do? Right? Because they don't even think that. They think short term, what's going to line their pockets. They got families to feed, whatever. But they don't touch the real estate investor or the syndicator or the investors. So what do? So then I got to train these guys who've had a relationship with a broker that's been killing it with them, you know, a good partnership. And I go, if we have meetings, and now if you don't do it, I'm going to go to Hull & Company versus RT. I'm going to find the youngest whippersnapper that has a small bud of business, and I'm going to blow him up because he's going to come in at 50%. So it's a constant juggle of greed, right? And it's this infrastructure that we got to do. So whether I'm recruiting from college people right out of school, what I've learned is that I'm recruiting from the real estate industry. That's my newest lesson, not the insurance industry, because these people... Because then they understand NOI, right? And so on.
Yeah, exactly.
And listen, tell Justin, tell us as a real estate investor what you think about risk, what the land value is, replacement cost. Why do the banks force us to have $5 million in insurance?
Because I think the requirements. Some guy in the back room in the insurance doesn't really care about the borrower. He just wants to protect his. So they make you overinsure. And they're really hurting it. I'll tell you one thing I was thinking of doing at one point. It's an idea I'll just put out there. You become a lender and you let people maximum self-insure, through you or whatever. I mean, like, are you kidding me? How many guys? It would only be appropriate for the bigger players who are capitalized. But all I need is the first $500,000 is where most of your claims are. I'm making up a number, whatever it's 200, whatever. Just I'll eat the first 500 on most of my buildings, because I know it's so low. Just insure me above that. Insure me, or the first 100 maybe I'll eat, whatever it is. I don't know where the exact line is, but insure me for the catastrophic. Let me eat the first 300 grand, 400 grand. There's nobody to do that, and all of a sudden your costs will come way down. But the reason you can't do that because those lenders don't exist. There are very few who are like that. But if you want to take over the lending market, understand that and become a lender. And you say that, you can charge them a half point more on the interest rate. You'll get all the business. You'll get all of the big dogs. And they'll save insurance. And they'll give guys like you, Jerry, tons and tons of business because you understand
100%.
You're a real estate guy who does insurance.
Right. So the lever is also the lender. And that's what I always tell you. Your most important decision when it comes to reducing insurance expenses is the lender. And by the way, like Hy-Vee just looked over at me and goes, that property that Justin was insuring for $120 a foot, I got a carrier to go to 70 a foot, but I think it's too low. I go, you should call Justin first. I go, let him take the risk because if he wants the risk, he takes the risk. If he doesn't take the risk, he doesn't take the risk. So let me sum up insurance, what I've got, which you'll completely understand what I found out. Here's what it is, where it started. The government loans money, right? The banks borrow from the Fed, all that kind of stuff. So what's the most efficient way to make an ROI on a dollar that you can borrow with debt at a certain rate, Fed funds rate, whatever it is? I'll tell you how. You're a bank. You borrow from the government at 4%, right? You turn around, you loan it to Justin at 6%. No inventory. It's all contracts. It's all debt. He collateralizes it. And then if you're going to borrow money, they make the spread on this. By the way, you also need wind, hazard, liability, terrorism, law and ordinance, this. And about 75% of that will never be triggered. Never.
Full access flood terrorism. Really? When's the last time? I mean, Oklahoma City, maybe, but whatever. That was 25 years ago. It was a government building.
Right.
So the point is this. Who do you think owns the insurance companies? Who invests in the pools? The banks.
Yes.
So it's a way for them to verticalize whatever you want to horizontalize. And now another contract on top of another contract that you have to pay. So look how they take that dollar and splice it up. And then they force it on this side and then this side. It is, so most millionaires are made in real estate. That's the money business, in the contract business. And that's where by owning the insurance agency and a real estate operator, I was like, holy shit, look how efficient this system works.
Right.
And they parlay on the government, right, to do it, because that's where they dump the loan pools, right? Yeah. And then they get the regulations, the lobbyists from, I mean, we shouldn't even put this out in public, right? The lobbyists from the largest banks, right, are the ones that go into the government and say, you have to have wind, you have to have terrorism, right? So look at the industry. I mean, you're not going to hear this in many places, but if I look at the big picture, that's what I found. And like you said, that's why I've approached credit unions like Bright Star, nonprofits, member owned. Are you willing to get into the commercial real estate? Right? And they're like, David Mateo, right? You know him. And he goes, well. I'm like, you're a $20 billion credit union, member owned. And they're not as regulated, right? Very compared. Yeah. Next thing you know, he goes, you know what, Jerry? This is in 22. I approach them and I go, listen, if I bring you 2001 construction or newer, the new codes in Florida, hurricane windows and all that steel, and I go, they're 5 miles from the beach. Will you waive wind? Took me 3 meetings with the board, and then they agreed.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I told you that. So because guys like you are my clients, guys like me who's an operator, they're done in that market. Now, there's your edge, right? As an operator. And by the way, we've talked about Justin in the construction business. Why is he willing to take the $500,000 first loss? Because he could do it for half the price.
Right, yeah.
Right? And by the way, once he makes that claim on that insurance policy, now his insurance doubles at $500,000. Right. So that's the problem, because you got adjusters, you got this, you got that. Everybody's got to get paid. Right. So it's crazy. So he could take that $500,000 claim. He'll take the loss. He'll keep his insurance low, and he'll probably rebuild it for $100,000 because adjusters inflate by 4x. Yeah. That's also what I've seen and things of that nature. So big learning right there. All right. So I got a couple more questions for you. And again, folks, no one's going to tell you what I just told you, right? So like, subscribe, share this with your partner, share this with
let me add this. You taught me this, which I thought was great. You taught me that one of the reasons that insurance spiked up recently was because interest rates were high. Because those banks, why are they going to put it in the insurance company when they're going to get 4.5% on a 10-year? And the same thing with life cos, because life cos invest also in the insurance.
Yep, right? Life insurance companies, right?
I just want to offer that. So even though I do want to strangle the general insurance companies, they were fighting that. They were fighting that battle at the high interest rates. Yeah.
No, I got it. And listen, between you and me, you got a claim under $100,000, they'll pay over. There's always a gray area. So it's just listen, we need it. I have clients, that owned 100 units in Lake of the Ozarks, and they bought it at $80 a foot, wood frame structure, right? It was a hotel. Right. And then and 2 tornadoes came through and they got paid $140 a foot, right? So that person was like a trauma. That guy right now, he overinsures everything. He calls, and everyone's got a different risk tolerance, right? Yeah. And he may not have a construction company as part of his operations. Yeah. So that's why the total asset optimization, we spend 30 minutes with you on a call and we ask you this stuff. What's your risk tolerance? What's your structures? What are your goals? All that good stuff.
Yes.
And so our clients aren't just cutting costs, they're boosting valuations. We took one portfolio from nearly $1 million in premiums to $680,000 using our TAO process. If you're an investor, an operator, or an asset manager, it's time to run the numbers with us. Go to premierprotectioninsurance.com and apply for a strategic review today. So getting back to a couple of things, and then we're going to clean it up. Okay. And a little more personal growth side and stuff like that. So what's one piece of advice the younger Justin wouldn't have been ready to hear and needed to hear most?
Ooh, that's a really good one.
And take a little time.
Yeah.
What's something you needed to hear when you 15, 20 years ago that today?
I would say master your I don't know if this is what it's, let me just say it, then I'll re-say it. Something like master your emotions. Don't be your emotions can drive you. Like your emotions sometimes are like a thought that you haven't figured out yet, right?
Right.
But I can be, or in the past I could be volatile. I was always, but I would say practice just letting whatever the issue is, let it resolve, let it, whatever you need to do, exercise on it, think about it, whatever else. But when you're acting, um, let reason drive you. Let reason drive you. Like because I was, I could be harsh. I think with some folks, even though I think most of
I
these
know.
folks are very fair, very very good guy. But that would be one thing. One thing would be just um,
Breathe.
to breathe. Yep.
Guy, no, listen, I was there. My father used to tell me nothing I ever did was never enough. I mean, everything I did
Right.
was never. Keep it, Jerry. Did you paint your room? Yeah. Okay. You missed 50 spots, right? And
Right.
even when I did, I couldn't do it. So that came out on a lot on me, and I did that to a lot of people, and I
Right.
learned, and I'm like, what am I going to do?
Right.
Get a reputation to be the biggest asshole who's rich and he's
Right.
always right, right? And I learned that
So I
that
guess,
doesn't
Gary,
work
the
for
way you
me.
say it is, I think self-composure is one of the most admirable qualities, and one of the most effective for doing what you need to do. Yeah.
Got it. No, 100%. Got it. All right. One more question. Was there a time in your life where, like, a moment where you questioned everything, right?
Oof.
Your belief systems. I
Yeah.
know that's a big one. Your belief
Last night.
systems and how did. Listen, as I get older, that's the like I make commitments to myself, right? Like I'm going to do this, right? And there's
Right.
this, and then I realize this shit doesn't work for me anymore. I'm like,
Yeah.
why am I
Right.
committed to something
Yeah.
that doesn't work for me? So tell us about a moment that you had where a commitment that you had made to yourself was no longer working for you. How you figured it out and how you pushed through it.
Oh, that's tough, Jerry. I would let me see if I can come up with one.
We got a lot.
I would just say, I would tell you that when so I have, I'd like to say my ex-wife and I are the ideal divorce couple. And but when we divorced, it was rough. And again, I think I lacked self-composure at that time. I was, I was hungry in every way you can imagine, hungry for this, hungry for that, all sorts of experience, all that kind of stuff, life, younger guy. And so I would just say that she and I have a really good relationship. I just got home last night. She's walking my dog. I'm sorry, she's watching my dog. I just put a roof on her house, and but that was I realized I realized that for me at least, just because I had this great appetite for whatever I had. Um, doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. It makes it imperative that I think it through and that I act with in line with long term principles. You know,
Right. No,
um,
stand on your principles, right?
yeah,
But we
yeah,
didn't know that when we were 25. And I said,
yeah.
the
That
one with
should
the
right
most toys wins. That was the poster
exactly.
behind me. Right. No, I get it. Today, I'm a
Yeah,
believer of the universe, Mike. You know what I mean? And
yeah, yeah.
once you figure out how the universe works and
Right,
helping people, and
right,
Justin's got a superpower, God given talent that he's using. It's giving back, and giving back. This means it could be creating businesses. It could be, I always say, people ask me, I ask people, what's the purpose of a business? What's the purpose of a business, Justin?
but it's to basically to provide what people need or want and create good things for the people involved. I'll give you
Exactly.
we have five constituents to a business. We have investors and lenders. They come first because they provide the money, if you know, but not first in importance, just first in sequence. Then the second
Mhm.
one is your employees. If you don't have employees, all our buildings are just collecting cobwebs and falling apart. And then your third one is your tenants, or you're basically your tenants, your guests, and they pay everyone, right? If there's anyone who's most important, they pay all the
Mhm.
bills and everything else. And if you're lucky, at the end of the day, they pay you, right? If you've paid everything else. And then the fourth one is your founder and your key managers. Uh, people who are at the top who are figuring it out, putting the teams together, setting the strategy, and making it happen. And then the fifth one is the community. You got to get along with your building apartment, with your neighbors, and that kind of thing. So it's a five-pointed thing, and when you do it right, all along,
That's awesome.
a virtuous circle, and you get to do it again, right? But if I'm trying to do it at the expense of my investors or the expense of my employees or the expense of the community, no, you got to take care of all five. That creates harmony, and you get the blessing of doing good while you do well.
Right. No, in simple form, for me, right. First of all, I love that. Okay, I love the way you structured it and everything. I can do a podcast on it, right? But for me, the purpose of a business before the purpose of business was to make money, right? Nah, no way. The purpose of a business and a macro answer would be to solve problems for the community, for the universe, whatever you want. And the universe rewards you. The larger the problem that you solve, you are rewarded 10x, right? So Justin owns the apartment building. He's solving housing problems, and the universe rewards him 10x. If I go to the grocery store, the cash register, they're solving the problem with taking in money, right? But they get the universe rewards them proportionally. So as entrepreneurs, for me, the larger the problem that I can serve or I can solve for society, universe, it's designed to reward me when you do it the right way, right? And that's what it is. Just like he said, it's not about him money at the expense. It's about solving problems for everyone. And that's it. And that's what I've noticed is faith-based people stand on their principles, integrity, and then they understand that and they become some of the wealthiest people in the world, right? And I'm not talking about just money, right? But just everything in their lives because of those principles and so on. Okay, so love it, man. We could go on and on and on, dude, right? So
absolutely.
We're going to end with a lightning round. It's designed for quick answers, right? Because each one of them, me and you can talk on for 20 minutes because we love it, right? So try to do them short, right? And no fluff, no filters, just fast insights that can shape, your future moves and for others. That's the key here. Okay. Where are multifamily cap rates headed? Compression or expansion?
They're going to expand for a while, and before they compress, they're going to expand for quite a while.
Okay. What's your prediction for interest rate cuts in 2025?
Probably not till the end of the year. As far as the Fed cutting, probably not till the end of the year, maybe early 26.
Okay. Which markets are you most bullish on that others are overlooking right now?
I think that's a good question. I would say I like South Florida, but I don't think people are overlooking. I think I do like West Palm, especially actually too, and I like Central Florida. I think Central Florida is Ocala area. Ocala's got no ocean, but people are just flocking there because it's relatively very affordable.
Awesome. Okay, what asset class do you think is prime for a turnaround? Hotels, office, senior housing, what is it?
I would say I think multifamily. I think multifamily is the strongest one of all of them. Yeah, I think office is selective. Some parts good, some parts bad. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Biggest economic wild card that could blindside us in 2025.
Oh, that's interesting.
Besides Donald Trump.
Well, the biggest economic wild card is how AI might affect the cost of construction. If AI dramatically reduces the cost of construction, I don't think it's going to happen soon. But if it have a major impact. But within 5 to 10 years, it could. It could bring down construction costs 30, 40%. I mean, theoretically, let's say. I'm not saying it's going to happen. That would be
huge.
A huge disruptor.
Right, huge. Okay. What underwriting metric are investors being too aggressive with right now?
What metric are they being too aggressive with?
Underwriting metric.
Underwriting metric. I don't think they're doing rent growth anymore. They used to posit easy rent growth.
Stupid. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. They may want to use too much debt still. They might want to pare down their debt to make their life easier and then pull money out later if rates go down and values go up.
Got it. Okay. And if you were starting over with $100K and no contacts, right? No contacts, right? Where would you invest in one line?
I would invest somewhere near where I live at something that just covered its costs and and then pay down the mortgage where I provide the service and my tenants pay off the mortgage.
Justin, when I saw you speak somewhere at a conference and you got on stage And we have one more question there, but you got on stage and you said, "Who here believes $10,000 can turn into $1 million?" Right? And nobody raised their hand.
Right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
And listen, he explained it,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Right.
Right?
Yes.
I almost feel like I need to make a video short out of that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Justin, in like a 2-3 minute thing,
Yeah.
right? Tell us, because he could tell you right now,
Right.
for everybody, because we got anyone's listening, right? And they don't have this belief system.
Yeah, I'll do it right now.
How do you take $10,000 and
to
turn it into $1 million? Go ahead.
You let's say you're buying a home, FHA loan, 3.5%. So you're buying for 300 grand, you put down 10 grand, right? And now you're replacing rent with mortgage payments. So you're going to pay rent anyhow, but now you're paying mortgage. So that's it. 30 years later, average, rising of real estate, that 300 grand turns into $1 million, right?
Correct.
And your mortgage is paid off. So you started with 10,000 of equity and you turned it into $1 million worth of equity. And that happens.
It happens every day. It happened to me in my house.
Right. So it doesn't mean you can't go. You got to follow the rules of the road when you're buying at certain prices. But that's how real estate works.
That's simple. $10,000 down payment, $300,000 house.
Yeah.
You're in a decent area with demographics, right? 4% inflation compounded over 30 years. It's worth $1 million, right? You know, and the next thing you know,
and your mortgage
is paid off. And by the way, if it's a duplex, your neighbor's paying it off for you. You don't even.
Exactly. So you could actually turn exactly. That's how that works. Yeah.
Real estate 101.
Exactly.
10,000 turns to $1 million. You know.
Yep.
And that's the kind of clarity we all need more of, right?
Yep.
So it's just crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So if you haven't already, people, right, hit like, hit subscribe, drop a comment below, right, and share this with people because I created Real Estate Profit Boost really for mentorship. It's free mentorship, right? You're talking about a guy that can, he gets paid for his newsletter. You're talking about a guy who can charge $10K a month easily on a mastermind, if not, and so on. So click below, subscribe, share this, right? What was your biggest takeaway? Tell us in the comments, right? We respond to every comment, and this is how we build smarter, sharper investor community and share the wealth. And, our foundation is integrity, people. So that's it. So this is world-class, Justin. You've shown us that execution, it's not about spreadsheets. It's about discipline. It's about wisdom. It's about playing the long game, right?
Right.
So for our listeners, don't just consume this, act on it, right? Johnny Bravo it, because listen, I've been to 1 million seminars. I've paid for it. They used to call me the one at Landmark. I go, what does the one mean? It's a language distinction.
Yeah.
You're the 1% that actually does it. And I can't tell you how many times I've been to a real estate mastermind where people have paid $5,000 or a Tony Robbins thing. And here's the thing. They come back year after year after year and they never execute.
Yeah.
Never.
Yep.
Right? That's what separates us, right? That's what Justin is. He takes it, he learns it, and he acts on it, right? And that's Johnny Bravo. And by the way, my biggest suggestion to all those people out there is you don't have to start perfect. You don't have to have the 5-year plan. You just got to move, even if you aren't ready. And then that builds momentum. But that's people's biggest problem, Justin. That's what would you agree?
Oh, yeah. I knew people who would, you walk into the house, they have like 20 real estate courses. They hadn't bought a house yet.
Right. And they spent $40,000 in courses.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's it. So if we can leave you with that, that's it. So number one, Justin, is there anything our audience could do for you? Right? Are you, where's your newsletter? Go to Justin for Pax Properties.
Just go to paxproperties.com. You can read about us. Send me an email. You want to, say hello. Or we only do accredited investors, but we're kind of
He's overloaded. Yeah.
We're fortunate. Our folks are really good, but we're always interested in making new friends and new strategic partnerships and all that kind of stuff. So just reach out and say hi. I really got nothing to sell, Jerry, but you are doing a great job in my insurance, and you are
bud.
an amazing guy, Jerry.
You too, Justin. Listen, we're lucky enough to surround ourselves with guys like him, and it's great. I'm the founder of the Commercial Real Estate Forum in South Florida. Justin's a great part of it. I met him in a hallway at a Marcus thing, and there's something about people that attract energy, law of the universe. I don't know what it is, but that was 14 years ago, 15 years ago. So that's a wrap, folks, right? That's Real Estate Profit Boost. An incredible, incredible interview. I can probably chop this up into 5 hours of interviews, and maybe we will. Justin, I want to thank you, man. It was awesome. I knew this was going to be awesome when you agreed to come on. Everything you said, everything I've learned from you is just amazing, and I just want to thank you for being you, because you are the man, right? And I love you, and that's all I could say, my
Hey,
man.
same here, brother. You know, I love you. I love you 100%. Thank you, brother.
All right, and that's a real estate profit boost, folks. Thanks again, Justin. Love you. See you soon. You want higher profits without higher risk? The blueprint's right here. Hit subscribe and watch Real Estate Profit Boost.